What if it was? What if this was? Get this. How upset would people be? Like anybody on the screen, if we found out that Lilly Phillips wasn't even an actual person, the whole thing was just an AI hoax, and you all bought it, right? And like it wasn't actually people. Even the guy that interviewed her, it was like it wasn't real. All the whole thing was AI because none
Even
of
the
us have
wretch.
actually met her, right? None of us have even met her, right?
I'll tell you what if here's
How pissed would you guys be? I wonder how pissed would you be, or would you be relieved?
well, okay, so here's the thing. The what if, it doesn't matter. You know why? Wrestling. Because the thing is that no, here's the thing. It doesn't matter if it's fake. What matters is that we get the satisfactory ending to the story. Like so, and the thing is that the people will be pissed if the story does not end satisfactorily. Now, what that is, what the majority of the market, the people watching think that is, I don't know. I think, we do need chivalry back, but chivalry's gotta. When chivalry started, it was knights were facing barbarians that were brutal, and so I think you can't be. There was a really good part in the talk between Jordan Peterson and Greg Laurie. One of the moments that kind of didn't really stick out, but I made a little thing about it later, where because Peterson was talking about like he didn't like why he's suspicious of Christians or evangelicals or whatever, and he said it's because most morality is like a cover for cowardice, and that it's the cowardly men that tend to gravitate towards the faith. And then he had some crazy friend that was like trying to fight the gym teacher, but that the normal person does like enough risk, and if you have the right father figure, you'll navigate your way through life. I think like some guys need to be cunning enough to, I don't know how many buddies they need, 4, 5, 10. Get in that queue, sign up there, and then make a plan to just grab her and get out of there. And that's actually what somebody should do. Somebody should physically remove her. We should not respect like laws or whatever, this thing of consent to that degree. Because if you were watching it on a movie, you wouldn't be, that's what you want.
Yeah, now the one thing that's tricky there, and I think it's something that I'm not sure has entered in the conversation yet, is the perceived risk in that you mention is that, what if the laws, what if somebody stops you, what if you're not able to do it? But the one risk, the other risk there is, what if you get there and you end up not doing it? You end up not only that, you'd end up not grabbing her and taking away, but you end up just going along.
That's why you need to have a bunch of guys. You need because that's the thing. One person would chicken out. 2 people might chicken out. If you have enough people,
here's the thing, though, Michael. Here's a couple thoughts come to mind. There is one is you're moving more in the direction of Taliban culture. It's a fundamentalist response that says we're going to coerce morality.
Well, and if she's under 18,
but she's not under 18. No, she's not under 18.
But that's the point. So why do we respect that?
Let him finish, Michael.
All right.
Okay, but what you're talking about initially sounds rather benign, relatively harmless. It does escalate, and it can turn into a system where you end up with men who throw acid on the woman who behaves shamefully to protect the family, the community, the clan identity, and righteousness. I don't think do we now need a society? Are we, through our righteous indignation, do we want to promote gang-like behavior in our society. Does that
All right, we got your argument. Anybody want to respond? Michael, first chance, and then Mo on this, because I think I love Michael's thought experiment on this, because it illuminates a lot.
Okay, here's the thing. I am certain that there are men who would like, because I've heard their comments, that would like to disfigure her, think she's the problem, think that these women are the problem. I think that's horrible. Because, I am enough of a believer in chivalry that I'm not gonna, that's granting her all the agency for all her actions. I think, like, the thing is that the difference between a knight and a barbarian is not that barbarians throw women over their shoulders and knights don't. The difference is what happens after they bring them back to safety, and the knight respects the woman's freedom then, but they shouldn't respect her freedom in that situation. Even if she set it up, and even if her mother set it up, it's wrong. And if it was kids, everybody would agree that it was wrong, and the righteous people would applaud the vigilantes. I mean, obviously this is risky, but all
right. And I'm going to get into Rod's point that he colonized me a long time ago in terms of non-coercion, but now to Mo.
Yeah, I think a big part of it has to do with intimacy or knowledge, right? So if this woman, Lilly, was my cousin, no hesitation about doing that with a gang, by myself, whatever. But as a stranger, there's a certain level of information I don't know. And just to give an example of this, I had a friend of mine had an alcohol problem, and she told me that a couple of friends of hers would wait for her to get really drunk, and then they would come over and basically date rape her. It was a regular thing. And I remember one time I was at her place. She was another musician. We were playing some music. She drank too much. One of these guys shows up. And so I pretend that I'm drunk, and I end up walking in on him, basically trying to do that. So I grabbed him off her. I beat him up. He threw him out of the apartment, and he's crying. About a week later, I get together with this girl again. She's pissed at me. And she says, I lied to you. That's not what they were doing. I just know you're a Christian, and I feel uncomfortable sexually, and I would call them as I'm getting drunk to come over because I don't have the wherewithal to do it. So I beat the crap out of this guy thinking I was doing a good thing, but I didn't know enough about the situation. And I think we have sacrificed so much intimacy in our communities. We don't know what people are into, and a lot of times we've chosen not to know. And so if it's a situation where it's somebody that I know intimately that has gone off the rails, yeah, I'm great being chivalrous and running in and being the savior. But I also have to start making it my business to know those that ought to be close to me. And I feel like we've set up a world in which we keep people at arm's length and then wonder why we make so many mistakes when it comes to this, or wonder how could they have gotten so far. Or we can say things like, I don't know enough about that situation to get involved.
And part of what gives Lilly Phillips purchase is we are projecting massively on this. And wasn't it Andrew Tate that said the most powerful man is the man that can say no to the attraction of a woman? And true. That is
true. Mo dropping some serious cred, by the way. Like, we're talking theory. Mo's bringing some real life here. That was a hell of a story, man. But Paul, I'm glad you invoked a little bit ago. You invoked our Connecticut. I was hoping we kind of get around to it, and I'm gonna kind of circle back to that a little bit, because Mark, every time Mark waxes poetic about his love for his wife, it's an absolutely beautiful thing. Same with Chad and my story of the country singers. I'm sure that most of them on that stage would want there to be a man that felt that way about them. Now, the part that I think would be missing then, that is very much present today, is that it would be a very specific man. In other words, it's not any man. There's lots of men lining up to show interest, that are interested in their presentation. All of them are on Instagram. They're all doing the things to get attention and all the things, right? But they still, at some level, want and hope that there will someday be a man that feels that way about them. And I think what triggered Mark and my friendly little, not exactly a disagreement, but a kind of disagreement. I said, because I'm now in my second marriage, and one of my guidelines was that I'd seen so many of my friends just go through hell with divorce and alimony and just, really contentious situations. Lot of regrets. And I said that one of my criteria is that I would not marry a woman that I could not amicably divorce. And there's a bit of a colon in there, of course, because I love my wife and have no intention of divorcing her. But I also am very confident that, God forbid it came to that it would be an amicable and painful, but not contentious. It wouldn't be World War III like so many divorces are, right? And of course, Mark, that landed on Mark. it was almost antithetical to the whole enterprise. It's like, why on earth would you ever even get married then, right? Or something to that effect. So, but the reason I brought it up is because, to Paul, you've alluded to this, I think we're living in a different time. We have unleashed female agency and sexuality on culture. And, Tom Holland will make the point many times that if you want to think of Christianity as taming male sexuality, the Roman, sexual ethic, well, fair enough. We, took us 1,500 years to try to tame, rampant, just promiscuous male sexuality. Well, now women have the same agency, to Michael's point, right? They can make, I love Mo's story because men can relate to this, seeing themselves as the one who's going to save the day, and then having a girl look at them with contempt, like not that she did with you, Mo, but just like, what were you thinking, right? So this is a new world, and that means we're going to need better stories. We're going to need better. That's why I said what I did about, like, if you are you sure that the older version of you is going to like the choices you're making now, right? Because of course a lot of women are discovering that the things they want in life when they're older are no longer available to them because of choices they made.
And I think a lot of that, Rob, is that they were told lies by their parents. Like, I can't tell you how many young women have been told by their mothers, not their managers, but don't marry like I did. He's not the guy he used to be, or something like that. Except that they're still married to them, still celebrating their grandbabies, but they're only showing their daughters and sons sometimes the worst part of their relationship with their husband. Well, why haven't you left him yet? Well, because I have this, this, and this. Maybe those things are good things.
Don't make the same mistake I made.
Mm-hmm.
How many mothers have said that to their adult daughters?
And what an awful thing to hear. Don't make the mistake I made by getting pregnant with you early.
And marrying your father.
Yeah. Half of your genes are awful. I hate them. And you know what? I wish I didn't have you when I did. What a horrible thing to say to your kid.
This article that I mentioned, it's on the Substack, The Human Carbohydrate. And this article was one piece of saying the quiet things out loud on both sides, and talks, begins with this sign, which of course grabs attention, and really runs through a lot of things. James acknowledged that there's more to life than sex, of course, and I know there is more to life than love. But like a baby monkey, I'd rather starve and cling to the warm embrace of the cloth mother than survive by sucking on a barbed wire tit. James is now happily partnered up, and he has made his peace with being monogamous. He is done looking for sex. I will never tire of looking for love. If years pass me by and my last egg dies along with my hopes of having my own family, I won't come to terms with that reality. I will take my bitterness to my grave and use my dying breath to call all the men who could have loved me but didn't, and tell them I hope I meet them in hell. Damn you, I'll say. You want to fuck me? I want you to love me. And then this great thing. I grew up thinking I was a Disney princess. Turns out I'm this lady. And I'll put the link for those of you. I'll put the link in the live stream right now, but it's a heck of a piece.
It's brutal. Yeah.
It reminds me of a lot of different songs. What is Sheryl Crow had the "Are You Strong Enough to Be My Man?" She talks about all the different mood swings, or the "I'm a bitch, I'm a lover,
Yeah.
I'm a child, I'm a mother."
If you can't take me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best.
Yeah.
That's a terrible idea.
Michael's solution might make sense in a culture where that kind of constrained violence is well understood and practiced over generations. I think I may have told this story about my father when he was dating my mother. She was a waitress, a teenager herself still. And there were some creeps in the diner she worked at. This is in the 1950s. He comes in. These creeps are giving her a hard time. He comes into the situation, and as I recall, the story was told that he was a little he was outgunned, so to speak. So he or the owner makes a call, and next thing you know, his brothers show up. One of them, a beast of a man, carrying a big chain wrapped around his fist. And they cleared the place, dealt with the creeps. Nobody got arrested, so I don't know what level of mayhem, but it was part of the family lore. My mother was rescued. My father was probably saved from a severe beating or worse. And it was part of the family culture. And you have that kind of chivalry enacted, and there was a place for that. We don't in the United States. I just don't see it. What I would see happening here is somebody would come in carrying a firearm. Something much worse would happen because we don't have those constraints. Am I communicating?
Yeah. Well, and just to play out, and then we're going to land the plane with takeaways and drop the link. But what would happen if someone actually, a bunch of TLCers decide they're going to sign up for Lilly Phillips 1000 and decide they're gonna run this. We've now organized. We have a conspiracy going. This is a conspiracy theory. We're going to be led by Grim Grizz, and much to Pastor Mo's warnings. But we know how this would end if you kidnap her. The police will come and lock you up for kidnapping, and you'll probably get sued because they've invested a lot of time and money into this publicity stunt, and they had expected a certain return on the investment. And so, and then the question will be,
get a bunch of clicks,
that should be the return. And I think somebody should be willing to do that, knowing that's the return. That's the expected return on investment.
Well, you're anticipating the civil rights movement. And
that's a marketing ploy.
Letter from a London jail, which is the manifesto. And I mean, that's how, in some ways, the perpetual warfare of religion, because on top of all of this is what these are spirits at war. I mean, this is let's get woo again. These are spirits at war because there is an arms race that's going on, and it's spy versus spy, and it's countermeasures. So, okay, you kidnap Lilly Phillips, and of course, she's probably going to then have bodyguards so that nobody interrupts the next time. So that way you get to have your moment of intimacy with her, not only with her and a cameraman, but also some burly guy who's got to sit and watch this all morning. But
just hand her a pamphlet, just hand her some scripture,
spiritual laws.
But what she really wants, getting back to Rod, is someone who would come into that room and look at her in the eye and say, I'm willing to take you, and I will be better for you than a million OnlyFans and $1 billion because I will give you what you really want, which is love.
Yeah, I don't know if she would hear that while she's busy disassociating. Like,
True.
Well, what if you just had a prayer meeting? If you instead of a gang, have a prayer meeting that would just you got to remember, God allowed this shit. Why are you thinking that you're better than God? That you're going to disallow it?
Well,
It's not my sister. It's not my daughter.
Is
If it's my daughter, yes, it's my
I
responsibility.
didn't
Is your
suggest
channel
anybody.
monetized yet, Mark? We gotta get Mark into the OnlyFans stream, and then we gotta grift and get Mark to London, and Tayo will round up the estuarians, and we'll have a prayer meeting outside the London Airbnb.
Bring it in the sheaths, or what it was.
And Mark will lead us, and we're gonna get him a knight's outfit.
I wouldn't suggest anybody does anything without the call of God, but I wouldn't be surprised if God called somebody to do that. I mean, that's how the gladiator fights stopped. You know, somebody went in there and said, "Stop doing this," and they got killed, and then everybody lost the taste for it. So maybe that's what has to happen.
Yeah, you know that if she tries to pull this again, this is an arms race. There will be something will rise to this. It's going to happen.
No, you guys, if any of the things that you guys are suggesting as things that would work were put into motion at all, they would just fall flat. Because if they worked, they would have already worked, the 100,000 times they've been tried before. Like the story that who Mark Parker just told about, supposedly his hero dad called his buddies and they beat up some chummy dudes for being douchebags to the teenage diner girl who, like this mythological story, which I highly don't believe, by the way. If that story worked, then why did we stop doing it? Duh.
No, it's because of,
Well, they stopped doing it because they grew up a little bit.
Oh,
and
so
you can.
No, it's not. No. What I'm saying is, why didn't you do that, Mark? Why didn't you do that all the time? And then why didn't you teach to do that? Because
Okay.
they certainly haven't. And so, if that were the case, if it actually worked, it would continue. If it actually worked, it would continue to be replicated over and over and over. And instead, the only place where things like this are happening are like, in the places where Mo grew up in, where they kind of regulate things there a little bit, but then it just evolves into other bullshit. So
I think that one of the issues there is risk.
Stupid.
It's like, so an area like mine, a lot of terrible things happen, but some good things happen. But there's a higher tolerance for risk where I'm at because we're constantly taking risks. But I've mentioned this before in other forums. It's like, I wonder how much of what we see is the result of success. Like it's economic success. Like we can afford to not take risks, so we don't take risks anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If I enter into that fight, I might get hurt. My livelihood is damaged. I don't want to risk that anymore. You become more risk averse. But I do think we also have to go. Paul has asked this question a ton of times. What do you mean work? What does it mean to work? It's not going to work absolutely. But I think some of these things do work for a time.
They're only temporary solutions to any earthly problem. It's because we live in a world of sin and death. Yeah, I can give you another example of the kind of gesture I'm talking about, where it's like during 2020 and the George Floyd protests, but prior to the riots, a community next to mine, white supremacists had taken up attacking black and minority youth who were doing protests for George Floyd in response to the killing. I knew this place. I went to they had a location on Yucaipa Boulevard where they congregated, the supremacists. This was in my Buddhist heyday. So I showed up in my Buddhist style. I had a big, large golfing umbrella that wrote, be kind, justice for George Floyd. And then I rang a bell. And I walked around with this. and I walked. I just walked, and I rang a bell, and I prayed a prayer, and I did this ridiculous march along this stretch of Yucaipa Boulevard. I did this in a couple locations, and I just did it. All right, and I did it, and then they'd look at me, and some might talk to me for a minute, but they mostly just stood back. And the funny thing is at those spots, there was no more violence. Now, I'm not taking credit for it. I'm just saying it's a coincidence. It happened. Now, you could say it's bullshit, it's mythological, or you could say somebody had faith to try something different and did it.
All right. Every estuary gets better when people tell their stories. All right. This is going to be the wrap-up round where you share takeaways on today's conversation. And I'll know, Chad, you can when you unmute. Anybody has takeaways they want to share from today's conversation?
I'll go. I mentioned that I literally learned to read on the Bible. My dad, before breakfast every morning, the four of us kids would sit around and read the Bible together, 2 verses at a time. And when I was about 4, I was the youngest, I was invited to join the group. And I'm sounding out, so-and-so begets so-and-so. Like, I don't quite know what he thought a 4-year-old was getting out of Leviticus. But I will say that particularly now at this stage of my life and the ways that I've engaged with this little corner, as I watch the culture, with probably a lot of the same horror that all of you have, stories like the Tower of Babel, stories like Sodom and Gomorrah, I have those stories in me, and I appreciate them because it helps me make sense of what's happening, right? Like, in terms of explanatory power, I'm not shocked as much by what I see because I realize that these patterns, these themes are maybe as old as humanity, right? So I'm not surprised when people do terrible things to each other. Most of my beef with organized religion is what I've said already. Is it seems like churches would be the obvious place that people would be going to find meaning and community and a more optimistic future. And I think the first time Paul and I ever talked 7 years ago, I said, Paul, I'm interested in the truth. Church is the last place I would go for the truth. I actually want to talk about this. I have questions, and I have enough experience in groups to know that these are not the kind of questions you bring up. So that's kind of where I'm at, right? That's why I'm here, is that I love this group and I love these kinds of conversations, trademark, right? But my take on it's a little different in the sense that I think the challenge is we're going to have to reinvent the institutions. We're going to have to rethink the way we come together and build community. And instead of being overtly Christianese, we should be informed by our beliefs, and then we should act in the world. And our actions should be what speak for us.
All right.
What I've come away with is that Rod should become reformed. Because we have to reform the institutions, and it sounds pretty good to me.
People often, why do you remain a Protestant? Well, it's
Luke
this
says,
reason.
Reform or revolution. That's Luke's. I don't know where he got it, but that's what he says.
Anybody else takeaways from today?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you having it, and thank you guys for being patient with me not being on camera and being able to give you some face-to-face action. Yeah. Yeah, my takeaway is, I grew up in the religious secular Christmas world, and it's a world, a religious view that has Batman as a saint, and it's a view that has I'll name all the different characters, and in that world, I too, like Mark, I had a stepfather who had a very strong sense of justice, but I'm not sure if it actually was justice as much as it was a strong desire to just be violent. And there was nothing, it wasn't rooted in anything strong. And so in that world, we also have what we have where, what we saw happen in the streets of New York not last a few days ago or whatever the hell that was. And then you see a culture starting to, in some parts, and in large parts, rally behind that. And I'm thinking, like, I don't know what to do in the world, that world. I can't live in that world anymore. But I have no choice because I live in that world. So, the takeaway is, I don't know. I guess
Oh no.
They hit the wrong button.
Very dramatic, Chad. Very dramatic.
Dun dum dum
To be
dum.
continued.
Well, Chad, can I?
Things on their phones. It's like,
Well, Chad reconnects. Let me throw you my thing, and I think Chad was just answering why I kind of had an initial negative response to Satori. His suggestion is that this, what itch are we really scratching when we want to supposedly rescue the fair maidens from themselves and from their families or whatever? I mean, it's just, the world is. I go back to what really drives me crazy in the corner is there's a big part of the corner that just. Okay, back up, Parker. John Wimber. I'm going to close with John Wimber. He got the day he gave his life to Christ. He had a vision in his mind that came to him, and he remembered a man with a sandwich board when he was a kid walking the streets. And on one side it said, "I'm a fool for Christ," and on the other side of the sandwich board on his back it said, "Whose fool are you?" And then Wimber said, "That's it. That's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be God's fool." And that's the lesson I took from him. And that's we need to be more foolish in the corner, more faith and more foolish. And I think maybe that's what Christianity, not just the corner, but that's what Rod's looking for in the church. We had more fools in the church would be better off, and the world would be better off as a result.
all right. All right. Thank you, Mark. Michael?
Well,
Any
I
last
agree.
closing thoughts?
I agree with Mark that we do need to be fools. But what's more foolish than a lost cause? And so I would just point to Rudyard, the guy from What If Alt Hist. He has this thing about the coming incel revolution. Like it's coming. It's going to be bad. It's going to be what Mark's fearful of. So I'm saying, as an alternative, maybe the incel chivalry crusade or something. Just sometimes you need muscles because there are bad guys out there. So that's keep our options open.
I don't know how Chad will feel about this, but it's probably not a good. We've probably not done anything. We've not been foolish enough. We've not taken enough risk until someone gets pissed off and yells at someone else and someone's feelings get hurt. But what you want to do is sort of create a container so that those things can happen and do happen. And I mean, the crazy thing about family is, you can divorce a spouse. You can try and stay away from a brother or sister, but they're always a brother or sister. And so I really liked this conversation today. And I really appreciate the foolishness that we so often see here with Michael Sartori, who's got 3 little daughters and trying to keep a family afloat and on live streams all the time and has his own channel. And he sits down and decides, I'm going to write a book. And he writes an 800-page book. And there it is sitting behind him over his shoulder. And I think that's the kind of foolishness we need more of. And the kind of foolishness that Chad the alcoholic has of all of the things he does, and Moises's foolishness of saving this girl and learning a lesson, and Mark D. Parker, I think I have a Don Quixote spirit in me, but I think it's stronger in Mark D. Parker, because he's going to go out to. You going to leave, Rod?
No, I just want to raise a voice, one vote of dissent. I'm not sure. I mean, you're wrapping up here, but I'm just not sure I'm fully on board with this being foolish thing. Like, that's not necessarily, but another conversation at another time. I'm just registering mild, polite dissent.
In CRC Synod terms, you're asking for your negative vote to be recorded.
Gravamina? Is my gravamina?
Your gravamina is acknowledged. And second, Paul, can you highlight Yosef's comment? Because I do think it's important, especially from the Jewish perspective. It's not too far up.
Oh yeah, and I think this is a lot of what Chad was pointing to, which is there's been a lot of men that, I mean, Rod earlier talked about the woo of male female the woo of sexual attraction. I'll just say it that way. And there's a lot of men. It's the woo of adrenaline, where you see something, and I mean, anger is a crazy thing, because and a deceptive thing, because sometimes, on one hand, anger isn't sin. Talking as a pastor, it's pretty clear. But a lot of people sin in their anger. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we need anger in order to do the thing. But so often I love Moe's story, because it reminded me of that great Buster Keaton clip where Buster Keaton, talking about a scrappy little dude. He's walking down the street, sees this big dude swat his wife, and Buster Keaton gets up and he swats the big dude, and the wife gets up and she swats Buster Keaton. I mean, just in that tiny little Buster Keaton clip is the world. And that's part of why there's no gaming this. And I think, to me, the message, the outtake I have is, in this age, in this dispensation, there's no final resolution. And I think that's deeply Christian. Christians wait for the eschaton, the second coming, the day of the Lord, because this war of spirits that we're living in the midst of, it will not end in this dispensation. That doesn't mean we don't need to fight it, but it also doesn't mean that there aren't so often countless ways, because and some men don't do harm to their kids because they're cowards, and some men don't do harm to their kids because they're strong, and some women don't do harm to their kids because they're nothing, and some women don't do harm to their kids because they're strong. And every family has its failures, but also often some little glimmer of something that even the child born in the brutalist of situations won't look back, maybe just one moment with a parent where they just caught a glimpse of a tiny little bit of the hint of the image of God remaining in a pile of pain. So this is the world we live in. Go ahead, Rod.
One more point of order. I'm not sure that we called out Ups for his generous contribution. He's actually made 2 on this stream, and I know others as well.
He did.
So one last pitch for do whatever you can for PVK in the holiday season, for all the good he does for us, and buy Michael's book. Although he might give it to you for free if you just ask nicely. But Anyway, just wanted to call out Ups for he's
Yeah.
a very generous
Thank
All
you.
right.
Ups.
Thank you all. This ends the official estuary portion of the show, and now I am letting in the unwashed hordes. And right now, the only unwashed horde is this man, who's that now. Franklin, Tennessee, is right next to Nashville, right?
It's true. I've heard of it.
Our mutual friend Ken Paul lives in.
I know. So do you have any questions for someone who, one of the most beautiful places on earth is Santa Barbara, and Rod left Santa Barbara for Nashville. That's saying something.
I always apologize whenever people around here. I tell them I'm from California. I'm like, I feel like I have to apologize immediately because this place has been completely inundated by people from California. I came here before all the COVID people, though, so it's almost as bad a reason. It was for a girl, but whatever.
So see, all of us in this stream are married men, and as some of you, maybe the one or two single ladies out there might not know, is that Alan is available, to the best of my knowledge.
I mean, Paul, you know this. I'm a bride of Christ. Me and Saint Paul. I read the Bible, and when it says Paul says, "Be that you are like me and single," I think that is what I have, unless there's something better on offer. I am resting in the Lord until I get the better offer. I'm completely contented. So, I have my identity in God, but if God chooses to bring me my one, come on, I'm not.
You can work your material on us anytime you want.
Yeah.
I live Alan, you'd appreciate this. I live about a block and a half from Zany's, which is the kind of.
I went there. I visited. Yeah.
And so Nate Bergazzi, he's a local guy, right? So I've actually seen him 2 or 3 times, but recently we went to see Dave Smith, and it turns out they're buddies, and so he just walked on, and I've never had the experience of like somebody at that level working out their material at a comedy club, and so he's on his iPhone, he's just scrolling through the jokes and just delivering them from his iPhone, and then you realize how good he is, right? Like, it was a cool experience, it really was.
Oh yeah. No, it's funny. People have all sorts of reactions to comedy clubs. The best is when people say, "So do you just make it up every night?" And it just always makes me laugh. Of like, it could take years to get an hour's worth of material, but people are like, "Oh, you just get up there and be hysterically funny for an hour." It's funny if you've been to a comedy clubs as much as I have, all the different preconceived notions that people have, or the people who think they're helping the show by getting drunk and talking to the comedian. The helpers, the little elves that there are in the comedy clubs. But yeah.
All right. Any other comments you wanted to make? Otherwise, if we don't have comments, I can close the stream.
Yeah. Last week, Nate got on all hot. He wanted to grab me, and I had to go. So I figured I'd stick around a little bit just in case somebody wanted to push back on something. I'd be here to defend myself.
Yeah, bring the rumble.
I guess one thing that in my own thinking is like, I want to put myself in a position of maximum, like, I'm a huge believer in just like being honest and saying like, I have very little leverage or ability to change things. I live in New York City. Like, the most humble thing you can do is just be like, what can you actually do? All these people have crisis and like, oh, my life's all in disorder. What can you actually do? And I guess one thing, which is why I'm sort of on my Franklin tilt, or the city that shall not be named, is like, yeah, it seems like in terms of the things that I want to do, being surrounded by like-minded people. I know people have their like, oh, they're all secretly hate Christ. Everybody who says they love Christ secretly hates it, and everybody who says they hate Christ secretly, I know the new agey, but it's just, if I put myself in a position where it's like, yeah, I'll give an example. People were talking about like, oh, well, people get sucked into culture. Well, part of that is also, oh, my kids got sucked into Taylor Swift and the culture. It's like, well, part of that's, there's nothing else on offer. It's like, oh, well, you can get into video games and Taylor Swift and the culture, and all your friends play video games, and all your friends are looking at pornography, or whatever it is. Oh, well, what's the other option? oh, nothing. Your father works 50, 60 hours a week, and I also work, and you can sit in the basement alone and do nothing. That's your other option. It's like, well, if you were really a Christian, you'd sit in the basement and read the Bible alone, like a Christian. But because you're worldly and you hate Christ, you're playing video. It's just like, there's not even another option. So of course your kid is like into the worldly thing. It's like, there is no plan, even if they're naturally predisposed to like, oh, I would love to be at a Bible study at age 16. I would love this. I would love that. It's like, there ain't nothing for them. So like, it's like, what is on offer? It's like, yeah, I grew up in the culture where there wasn't anything on offer other than the culture.
Well, you point out something really interesting there, because I've encountered a lot of parents that don't offer their kids anything, but think they do. Like,
yeah,
the guy's working 50, 60 hours, mom's working too. Oh, but we put them in this thing and that thing and whatever. And it's like, well, but that's not offering them. It's offering them these money, these lofty things. There's no body there. And they want to fill that with somebody. And you're not there. And you
could that be where church programming or church or synagogue or whatever programming comes into back play? Just like
they try to supplement it with church programming, but it's like they want their parents,
right.
And the parents just aren't available. They're trying to move up for the pie in the sky, and it's just not working.
Can we get to the parents by being there for the kids? I mean, is that just a reasonable strategy?
Well,
make it a loss leader and you just do it.
Well, it's good to go after the kids. I would totally agree with that. I think it's a big thing, but it also starts with like, I have to be for my own kids. Like, I have to make sure that I'm not going after other people's kids, sacrificing my own. Well, I have to make sure that me and my wife are making time to be there for our kids.
Yeah. And this is one place where it's like, yeah, if you're actually humble, you're not going to move heaven and earth. You're not going to take every single, it's like it's like the new atheist or even the apologists who are like, just show me anybody and I'll convince them that God's real or God's not real. It's like that chest beating, chest thumping. It's like, this is kind of why I'm pro Franklin. It's just like, there's a humility to like, yeah, I don't know how to do it. And maybe 99 out of 100 of the people here are fakes and frauds and they actually hate Christ and that they're backwards. Maybe one person has something to teach me and to help me, but that comes from a place of humility of like, yeah, I don't know how to do it. And especially in New York City, like what's on offer, especially in my community, is like, well, you're going to homeschool and you're going to live in New York City and you're going to do this. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to crush me. I'm going to like be lukewarm. I'm going to just stop believing. So like if my two options are take on the world in New York City or be humble and move to Franklin, like I think those are more correct analyses than like, well, just win, just be like Superman by yourself. It's like,
I think, Alan makes a really important point. I've been looking for this article that Aaron Wren posted on Twitter a few days ago where someone walked through basically the different generations, what it took for a baby boomer to buy a house and support children on how much income and how long it would take in general them to earn that much income and get to that point where they could do that. And then the millennials. And then so there are levels to this all over the place. And I think part of what Alan's pointing to is that zip codes still matter. Part of what's interesting about the Jordan Hall story is it was the zip code, it was the community. We sort of think that zip codes don't matter because it's all being interfaced by virtuality in this world. But New York City is a place. And in many, it's been a long tradition in America and probably other places in the world too, that if you want to change yourself, you change your zip code. And California is full of the individuals and children and grandchildren of many people who are escaping something and they came here, and America is full of such people. I think both sides of my family came to America because they were getting away from something. And so communities still matter. And then getting back to some of Rod's points and Mo's points, if you really want to build something, build a community and build a local community And if in fact that there are many children who deconstruct and leave really viable communities, but the degree of health and goodness and wholesomeness, Jordan Hall's word, in that community, that will never leave them. They will remember, and even if they get lost in a lot of chaos, it'll still act like a beacon out there. And for young girls, you know, the father that you are, psychologically speaking, that's going to have an impact on the men that they pick. And
Well, here's
women,
an idea.
same thing.
Here's an idea. So, you know, Alan, you're right. I mean, lots of people pointed out that the nuclear family is just, it's too load bearing. It simply cannot withstand the weight that's being put on, you know, two people, you know, drive till you qualify, buy some house somewhere. You don't know anybody and you're there because of the jobs you got or what you went to school there or whatever. And then just try to get everything you need from one other person. Right. And then raise children in that environment. You know, maybe the ultimate kryptonite of the age we live in is how much human thriving in adulthood depends on how much access an infant and child had to their parents when they were young. I mean, it just breaks the model if you think about it at all, right? But another way to think about it is, you know, for most of human history, we would have been raised in, to Paul's point, in communities, in networks, older women, younger women, right? Aunts, grandmothers, and so forth, right? Well, we have the ability to recreate these kind of arrangements. We have the technology. There's a deep, deep, deep hunger for connection, communion, meaning. So we have all these old folks that are like, nobody visits them. You know, they're living in, you know, they're still able to get around. They're in some kind of assisted situation where there can be gradations of care as they age, right? And they're, you know, there's a organization, I don't know if it still exists. It's called the Walking School Bus, I think. And somebody came up with the idea. It doesn't even really need to be an organization. It's just an idea, which is old folks meeting the school bus where it drops off and then walking the kids the rest of the way, right? Just being there to help walk them, you know, the last, you know, few blocks home or whatever, right? This can be done, right? And that's my point on our last meeting, is churches seem like the obvious place to do this kind of stuff. And if that's what churches are offering, there's a whole bunch of people who need a lot of help. And if it isn't churches, well, then create organizations. You know, I've spent my entire adult life starting nonprofits of various sorts. And, you know, some of them have gone on to be big things and some of them are just small things. But so there's a lot we can do, and just be a little creative and optimistic, right? Be future oriented. And so anyway, that, you know, that's kind of my pitch is, and doesn't have to be churches, but
Well,
I sorry, Michael, you go.
Oh,
no, go ahead.
well, I want to say, just so people don't think that I'm like a violent radical, this is like the central thesis of my book, and it plays into the mythology that our culture is priming people for. So you, as a young man, go to the small town, follow redeemed Zoomers' advice, get plugged into that mainline church where they're going to love you for being willing to step up and run the youth group or whatever. You get, you know, you build your life there. And then when the big city girls come home for Christmas, they're going to be primed to see the signals. And that's when you turn on the charm, and there you go.
And we have a little community here already. We have a little community here that would also would embrace you and welcome you. There's a whole group of us here that all stay in touch with each other.
So, you know, I need to keep hearing it, because
it's funny. Like, apparently Franklin is like the it girl in Christian communities, and I didn't know anything about this. Like, I heard you talk about it, and then I checked with my friend Ken. He's like, oh yeah, and like in my world, like all the Californians, like a lot of, you know, relatively elite, high net worth kind of people are all talking about Franklin. So for an entirely different reason. So apparently Franklin is kind of captured the imagination of lots of different groups. It's kind of small town America, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to. When did it become such a burden for churches to be open 2 nights a week and on Sunday mornings? I mean, I've got. There used to be a time I grew up. The best church culture I had was the one I grew up in initially. This Southern Baptist church. It left me as traumatized as it did educated and born again in Christ, right? I mean, it was definitely give and take, but it was still it was Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and then revival week in the summer, and another thing this and that, and
Well,
it
the
was
car.
you were there
Everybody's
all the
far away.
time.
It's like,
Huh?
do you want everybody's far away from the church? Do you really want to drive another 45 minutes again this week, especially when you have football, especially when both parents are working?
Right.
We've gotten ourselves too busy with other things. But if you want to if you want to be part of a building community, you're all welcome to come to Chicago. I can find you a house. I'm also a realtor. We're starting a church. It'll be great. There's the comedy scene in Chicago, Second City.
Although Luke just told me he just went to Second City like a few weeks ago, and he said honestly it was kind of not very good.
Exactly. We need more. We need better
Yeah.
comedians. I'm trying to buy a bar. You can do
It's the
some
mothership, and it's like not as good as it used to be.
Yeah. The one thing I would add, and like this is central to my like these like my own thinking, is like, yeah, these are all like wonderful ideas. I don't disagree with a lot of what people are like. I want it like I'm trying to think of it in terms of how like engineer it to work, and part of that is just make it easy. It's like, yeah, it's great that I serve a lot at my church, and like I I love my current community and everything. It's just like when I look at having a family, it seems like putting a giant boulder on your back of like your options are commute in and out of the city. My dad did it an hour and a half each way. So 3 hours a day commuting in and out of the city, or living in the city, which is even more so like treacherous in its own ways. So it's like, I agree that like all these programs, but like the starting point isn't just like, well, take your life as busy as it is and then load on the boulder of volunteering and doing all this other stuff that's idealistic. It's like, well, start with make it as easy as possible to live your, to do these things. And then you'll actually have time to volunteer. And because the drive to church is 10 minutes and it's not an hour train ride into church because you go to church in New York City, but live in Morristown, New Jersey. So like, I agree with our, like the thesis, but like my point is like, I also just want it to be easier. I'm not Superman. I'm like a sinner. I'm a lazy, weak, not good person. So if I'm trying to become the good person, I want the tiny little boulder. I don't want like, Lord, here I am, crush me with your hardest.
No, but
Not an option.
am I
Not an
saying
option.
that? I don't.
Not
I
an
was.
option.
But no, it's
No, I'm
like,
not saying anyone's saying that. I'm just saying that's my thinking. And
live
why I
within
bring up-
range of. Okay, well, pick a church that you can walk to. I mean, or drive to within 10 minutes or 30 minutes, if whatever's livable for you, and then be the guy who unlocks the fellowship hall for the kids' band practice one night a week. I don't. To me, that's part of this. You get enough people in a small church doing that, you're going to have a bigger church.
It's the only thing you said I disagree with, Alan, is the easy part. Like, no.
I mean, yeah.
Not only isn't it easy, it shouldn't be easy. Like, why would you want it? I had a old artist friend. He was in his 80s. I've been kind of active in the art world for a long time, and he was a sculptor, and it was it never gets easy. It was like words embedded in the sculpture, and I'm like, that's an interesting thing to put in a sculpture. And he has a little twinkle in his eye, and he says, and why would you ever want it to be? Right? Like, here's an old guy still sprinting across the finish line, still with a sparkle in his eye, still wanting it to be hard. Right? So no, it's not going to be easy. Like, but the Joyful Warrior is a beautiful place to occupy. It's practically an archetype.
I must say, I wonder if that's a generational thing, because although I mean the truth is eternal, I think, but the mindset is so. Because I remember when in my 20s, I'm no longer in my 20s, but when I was in my 20s,
we wouldn't know that to look at you.
I'm laughing at Alan's, all the Pharisees. Let's give this young man a good talking to.
In my 20s, my goal was to have enough money so that I didn't have to work anymore. And then I would work, but I didn't want. Then I didn't have money problems. And then I kept talking to more and more people, and I thought I was unique. As I'm talking to more and more people, all the people in my age group all had the same vision. We're going to retire at 40. We're going to keep working, but then we can do what we love, or some crap like that. Wasn't really realistic, but I felt like my generation, we've all thought that way.
I mean, yeah, I just like. I mean, it just like to me is so obvious that it's like, yeah, if you know, it's like, oh, you're not really a good person unless you have every temptation until you make your life as hard as possible. It's like, this is insane. It's like, I go to the strip club to prove that I would never cheat on my wife. It's just like,
Come on.
it's like,
That's
yeah.
a straw man. That's a straw man.
No, I mean, but my point is like, yeah, like, yeah.
Oh, you've never done that before?
the proof, and just like
part of the
that's
ordination
the
process.
that's the estuary counterpart to Mark Parker's OnlyFans ministry.
No. I understand, and there is a line at which you're trying to just do like the and people do lampoon the like, oh, we were on mission this summer. It's like, were you on mission, or were you in Costa Rica and going to the beach, and then one day you decided to paint a fence? So there is the dividing line. But
to be serious for a second, Alan, in the same sense that you're doing your part, volunteering when you can, and just trying to do your part, right? Don't forget that there's a whole lot of people who would love to help you. And I think this is something that gets missed. There's a lot of people that either given the opportunity or if asked would jump in to help however they could. And so just remember that, right? That you don't have to always be the one doing the thing that's making it all work. There are a whole lot of people who would love to help you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish as well.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Rod.
Chad, you're back. You have something you want to say, or?
Yeah. This can you hear me? I can't tell anything.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Yeah, the whole thing, it just kicked me off. I was in the middle of the thing, and I don't know what happened. Whatever.
We thought we were making a point.
Yeah, it was a great
No.
point. Timing was perfect.
I'm not that clever at all. No, it's just I don't know. Sometimes the reception in these places can be goofy. So I wanted to say, I wanted to encourage people if they're saying, well, I don't know how to get work or what to do for work. I'm telling you, the trades are like desperate for people, and I have no problem paying mortgage. I have to kind of like get up early and put my body pays for it, a little bit. But yeah, dude, I just want to encourage people to do that. So I know it doesn't really have much to do with it, but like, there's no easy button in this, unless of course you're a pastor at, Living Stones or something where you get paid to just talk to people. Like there's that, you could do that. Which why are you doing that, Alan? Why aren't you just a pastor? What's wrong with you?
Comedy works well for pastors.
Mark and I.
If you make people laugh, you could do okay as a pastor.
Yeah.
But Chad's point, there's a guy at my church who his business is training electricians, and you make good money as an electrician. And he runs an electrician training school connected up to, you finish that job, you get in there as a union journeyman electrician. And he's just like, you wouldn't believe how hard it is to get people to just finish this program.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not complicated.
No, and this is where the cultural issues are. Rod and I have long talked about the decline of churches, and there are, part of what's difficult is language, is because there are thousands and thousands of wonderful churches out there that are tiny and overlookable and also annoying, who do really basic, wonderful things all over the place. And there's at any given time all sorts of brand new baby churches just crying for anybody to come and help them. Now, Rod's point about all of this, which is like Luke's point about confessionalism and stuff. The other side of that, though, is that most often this kind of energy is around sometimes, and this, the Collins just say, well, these are arbitrary things. I don't think they're arbitrary. That's kind of the point of Peterson. But there's almost always some little thing in there. There's some little maybe inconceivable point that everybody's going to die on that hill. And it's that die on that hill energy that sort of allows that community to be. It's a fascinating human dynamic.
Yeah, and people's beef with, like, I understand the argument that, like, my friend Luke makes about professionalism and stuff, but it's a luxury belief for a lot of people. You know, like, why don't we just shut the F up and go to work? And then, like, go to church and maybe spend time at the church. And you don't have to tell everybody what you think you believe about God. Like,
I think
doesn't
Chad's
matter.
about to say enough.
Well, but the thing is, what makes AA go? It's that there's a one thing there. And the same with how many other things. There needs to be a one thing that is sort of irrationally embraced for the rest of the flower to grow so often.
Well, the one thing here is, like, everybody's right to be wrong.
I don't
one
know that
thing-
we've found the one TLC thing yet.
No, I think that's true.
One thing I would point out on this, like, though, with PVK, with your point about all the lovely little churches, is like the urban monocultures lives off of sending your kids to public school at a small town. And, you know, like, if you don't have a community that is purposefully developed an immune system to some of these things, like, it's great that you're walking through a field with your child and going apple picking, but one day they're gonna get, you need to, like, immunize them against ideas that are, like, against certain ideas. They prey upon your children. So it's just like going to some small town and, like, the grandma oh, would you like a hard candy? Like, that's a beautiful moment and it's very sweet, but it's like they're going to turn 16 one day and be like, I hate this small town. F this small town. I want to move to New York City. And it's just going to be like, and it's not just like evil call of evil. It's like, I know tons of people. I grew up outside of New York City. I know tons of high quality people who just thought the only place worth living, or like the only place I can succeed or have a halfway decent life, is New York City. Not because they're like party goers, but because they're like, to be alive, to matter, is to make money. And New York City is where you make money. These are people who go to bed at 9 p.m., but they know that, like, New York offers not just parties and drugs and illicit sex with 100 men, but also offers careers and trophies. And so if you're not thinking about those other cudgels that are used, then, the small town might be great until they turn 14 and they decide they hate you because they just, they've seen viral posts for the first time.
I like Peterson's comment about how we sacrifice our children to the world. The Christian Reformed Church tried and was successful, I think, in many generations of really reliably producing the kinds of insular communities they wanted to produce. Yet there's no guarantees in the age of decay. There aren't. And so that's part of why the Christian Reformed Church is really weird, because on one hand, I've never seen a denomination try harder to protect its children. On the other hand, it's also a denomination that has this crazy confessionalism of unconditional election. And I think that's part of watching it, saying, no matter how hard you try to deliver on your vision for what you think your children should be, you can't guarantee it. It's not humanly possible.
Paul, I think for the next fundraiser that you do, because this is a fundraiser, everybody, put your money in the super chats and whatever it is. The next fundraiser you should do is where PBK talks to 100 guys in one day.
I love it.
Mic drop.
I love it.
Do it.
Oh, that's good.
PBK talks to 100 randos in one day.
And there's that one guy who's waiting for his turn, and he's gonna, like,
Are a bunch of women going to kidnap me and save me from these men?
Saving
All
from
right.
himself.
I gotta go.
yeah,
You
good
guys
one,
have-
Chad.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
God bless you.
gonna land the stream here. It's called a meeting. Oh my. Yes. All right. Any last words? Otherwise, the branding's gonna start because I got some branding.
I want to
in
say
here.
it's a pleasure to be on a stream with you, Mo, and with you, Alan. Nice to
Thank you,
overlap
Simon.
with you guys.
Ditto.
Nice talking
Great
with
talking
you
to
guys.
you guys.
Good to see you, Mark, Michael, Mo, Rob.
I think this is a good one to close on.
This is the story of the search for mind control. Mission Mind Control.
To be able to create something that normally happens in the sun on an island in the Pacific, or to be able to rewrite a cell the way Craig Venter did, synthetic biology. We are now gods, but for the wisdom. The world's most serious human beings should be working on the twin nuclei problem. What do we do with new godlike powers given our history of conflict, our history of envy, our history of madness? We should definitely try it. Everybody believes that should work on that problem. Well, it's the Moses. It's the Moses thing. It's time to go. It's time to leave. This place is over. We get off the planet. I freak people out when I say that, but like, look at your world. Everybody who has a possible plan to avoid what is coming if we don't have one should work on the plan that she thinks best.
Now this is the plan. Get your ass to Moss.
Enough. Just go to the church. Guys, I can't hear the same story any more times of like, I tried to go to church, but it was too hard. Enough. You sit in the seat and you listen, okay? Enough. Just go to the church. Enough. Like, enough. Just go to the church. Enough. I'm tired of hearing your excuses.
Amen.
Enough, folks. Enough. Okay, put your big boy pants on. Enough, folks. We're done. We're done pretending we don't know how to give the pill to the dog.
Right. Like, they're much simpler than we ever imagined.
It's not that hard. Guys, we need you. High in openness, high in creativity, disagreeable people, you also need to be in the church. You put the pill in the peanut butter. You take the pill, you put it in the peanut butter, you give it to your dog. Enough.
Should be a meme.
Now we all know the rules of the game of trolls. So
Welcome to Worldly News Tonight. I'm Chad the Alcoholic.
And I'm rarely inebriated. Our top story, the second coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold.
Not just that, rarely.
But also reports have come in that mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity.
Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. For more, we go to Bling Flinger, our reporter in the field.
Thanks, Jim. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of the Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in the sands of the desert, a shape with a lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun is moving in slow thighs while all about it, real shadows of the indignant desert birds.
Fascinating. I heard that there were even reports that the darkness dropped.
That's right, Jim. The darkness drops again. But now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle.
But Bling, that merely begs the question, and...
That's exactly right, rarely. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born.
Thank you, Neil. Keep us in the loop.
Still I have it. There are moments I conveniently forget that I'm a 40-year-old man. The last vestiges of a ghost long dead. A ghost with a messiah complex. A messiah too lazy to rise or ascend. Happily hurt and hard. A hanger-on or haunting of a time past. A heroic dream of the harrowing of hell. Failure to launch. Cling to a life vest. Treading in spells that linger and last. Mom and Dad, righteous and mad, daydreamers with ghosts of their own. My memory of them stoic, looking with aims to pretend. Always on the brink of somewhere. Each a child dancing on the fence. On down the river. Dreamt in the sunshine. Saturday morning cartoons, the only Sabbath I knew. A disciple of Jim Henson and John Hughes. Worship in cathedrals where the Toys R Us. Baptized in ball pits. A clown served the sacrament we eat. More Pepsi and Pizza Hut. Say please. Say cheese. Between Kurt Cobain, a scrambled cable screen, towers tumbling, Super Bowls, and reality TV, the ghost is constitutionally unwilling and intrinsically unable to see and be seen, searching madly for attention to seek. But you could be anything. Never say never. If you've got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing, ever. Don't talk to strangers, see what I say, just do it. You don't listen very well, do you? You don't do very well, do you? You're not looking too good, are you? Keep up. Appearances aren't what they seem. Will you ever grow up? You look like you're stuck. I think you took too much. Echoes the ghost within the host, who prays the dead bury their dead and stay buried in a fading dream.
Where are you here?
Oh, there I am. Hey.
Where are you? Here.
Got me?
Oh boy. Yeah. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me.
Come on, man.
Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All that long is Jesus' journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Yeah.
Walk with my mama.
Yeah, walk with my mama.
Walk with me.
Walk with me too.
You walk with my mama.
Yeah.
Walk with me.
And walk with me too.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus' journey.
I want Jesus.
Want Jesus.
Walk with me.
Walk with me. Yeah, hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. You walk with Moses.
Walk with me.
Walk with me.
You walk with Moses. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
While I'm home.
Yeah.
Jesus
journey.
I want Jesus.
I want Jesus to walk with me.
Say, walk with me, Lord. How y'all doing?
Walk with me. Walk with me,
Lord. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
I'm on my I want Jesus.
I want Jesus
to walk with me.
To walk with me. Walk with David, a little shepherd boy. Yeah, you made him a great king. I know David shouted for joy. He walked with David, and he's a little shepherd boy. You made him a great king, and David shouted for joy.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. So walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. You gotta walk with me, Lord.
Yeah! That was rocking great, brother.
Oh, yeah.